Welcome back, my friends. My name's Steve Niemeyer. I am here on this journey of my life, and we've been talking about radio. We last spoke about some of the challenges that I had. And obviously, we are going to tell stories about some of the things that have happened in my life, like at the radio station. We're going to tell some stories, things that made a difference, made an impact. We're going to go through all of that at some point. But right now, it's just that overview. We're just slowly peeling off layers to this onion, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. I'm going to go into emotionally what I was going through while I was doing all of this. But I think first, we have to get back to the story. We're still talking radio, and this is the KINZ in Chinook, Kansas. We're going there next because I was just told I lost my fire. And I think anyone that would hear something like that would have the same response I had of, what are you talking about? So, anyhow, I had multiple job offers within a couple days of being let go at KKOI/KSMP. And so KINZ called me. Mike Sutcliffe said, "We need to talk. I heard you don't work there anymore." And I said, "News travels fast." And he goes, "Well, I want to talk to you about a position down here." So I told my wife, I'm going to run down there and I'm going to see what's going on. So I make the trip 20 miles or so to KINZ. Walked in, Mike Sutcliffe and I had a conversation. He said, "Well, here's what I'm willing to offer you," and slid a piece of paper across the table like they do. I didn't think that was like a real deal. I was like, "Here's your job offer. You know what you wrote. Why is it upside down? If I see it, you're going to see my reaction regardless." And I turned the paper over and I go, "Mike, I am so sorry. I am making more than that, or I will be on unemployment. I'm going to spend the summer with my kids if we can't do better than that. And then we'll have to talk about it later." Well, he called 2 days later and said, "Come down here. We need to talk. Let's figure this out. I really want you to come work for me." So I went back down there. We talked for a little bit, and he said, "What would happen if," and I paid you this much money, and turned it over and said, "And that's just a start. I promise you, once we get out of this weird thing that we're in here at the station, I will pay you more money. I will make it right. It's going to be good." And I said, "You know what, Mike? I love radio. Let's talk. Let's do this." So I started working KINZ, and I was the assistant GM slash office manager slash operations guy slash my business card was like flipping that big. It was ridiculous. I didn't even carry him around because I handed him something and go, "What the hell is it?" Looks like a menu. And it was just all the different things that I said that I would help him do when we were talking. So I am at KINZ. It is a classic rock station. That's what they said, right? Classic rock, KINZ. And so I'm down there, and Bubba, remember Bubba, the guy that was at KKOI that I replaced doing talk radio, because Bubba is now working there, and all of these people, Rob is there, and Rob used to work and Iola at KIKS. Remember that? "Steve, you're getting a little too crazy. I'll work on it. No, we're going in another direction." Those people. Anyhow, he was there and he went to KKOI, and then he ended up at KINZ. He did a Cheech and Chong or something. I don't know what the heck happened, but he was there. Bubba was there. Mike was there, and this was a pretty dynamic team of people that wanted to make things happen. So Mike and I talked, and he said, "I really need to get the billing up. I don't know what to do." And I said, "Have we ever talked about the bra story?" And he goes, "What?" And I said, "The sales pitch about bras. It's one that Phil actually had talked about." And he said, "What's that all about?" And I said, "Okay." And I don't know, do we need to get into this now? It's just a big mathematical equation of why the bra store actually got on the radio and started advertising. But maybe we'll get to that because that ties into a couple other stories that I need to tell you later. So remember, we're going to talk about bras, and trust me, it's okay. Everyone can pay attention to this one. But anyhow, so I'm down there, and I said, Mike, do we have anybody around here that you have a relationship with that can do t-shirts? I need some t-shirts printed. And he goes, for what? And I said, I have an idea. This is something that I did in Burlington on a small scale. And when I got to KINZ, I said, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. And I don't know why Phil hasn't done it down here, because it's a simplistic process, and you and I are gonna get some people on the radio with this. And so we found the person that was going to help us with the t-shirts. Got 4 colors. We got a lime green, we got a purple because of K-State, we had red and blue, I guess, because hey, it's KU. And anyhow, so we had these 4 colors, and everybody kind of picked a color and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I had the red. I said, I like the red, let's go with that. And so anyhow, Mike got purple, and we were talking, and they go, what are we doing with this? And I said, well, I ordered like, I don't know if it was 50 of each color. I think we had 200 shirts to start with. And I said, what I want to do is put it up on the website and talk about these shirts and the colors, and just make a little bit of buzz during the morning show. I'll go in, we'll talk, and then, Bubba and I can talk in the afternoon, and we're going to be picking t-shirt colors and talk about this for a day or so. In the meantime, I'm going to go out with the salespeople, and we're going to walk into businesses and tell them what we're doing. We're having a contest to see which color is going to win. And I said, but we need somewhere to display these t-shirts. So what I would like to do is hang one of these KINZ t-shirts, and you can pick the color, whatever color you decide you want with this. Let's do it. And so we walked in, the businesses loved it, because not only do they have a t-shirt that is hanging in the front window of their business. You see how weird this is? I'm talking about this, and the light starts freaking out, and it's blinking. See that ring? And it's doing that. Why? I don't know. And it got all blurry. Maybe I shouldn't be telling this story. Maybe somebody's telling me to stop. But anyhow, I can't, because we're in the middle of this, right? So we'll just do a little lighting theatrics in the background or foreground. It's however you want to look at it. Are you ready for this? We go in t-shirts hanging in the front window. They're going to be mentioned throughout this whole promotion, that they are one of the locations that you can go. They have a green shirt in the window, and you can sign up to win that green shirt by putting your info on a slip and dropping it in the box. That's all you have to do. Now, business, what we're going to do is, when it's time to draw winners, we're going to make a big deal out of this and do remotes from every one of these businesses. So it'll be a little 5-minute check-in. We'll talk about what's going on. We'll draw the shirt winner, and we'll move on. Well, they absolutely love the idea. They're going to get basically free radio stuff. All they have to do is display a t-shirt in the window. How simple is that? And you're all, Steve, why did you do this? Whoa, why did you do this? The visual effects this week are just amazing, and I didn't pay for any of them. But why we did it was because for the price of 200 t-shirts, and we only used a portion of those, we had them hanging in 95% of the businesses in town. We started on Main Street, so you get from one end of the business district all the way up. Every business has a shirt in there. And if they had a larger business with, multiple windows in there, we'd go, would you like to have a couple t-shirts? And they go, can we do that? We go, you know what? Come on. They're free. Let's hang them up and see what we can do. So we did this during the course of it. As they said yes, we hung the shirt in the window. So by the time our salespeople went up and down this street, we had convinced all of these people to let us hang our t-shirt banner in their window for a couple of weeks. So we talk about it on the radio. People are excited. They want to win a shirt, knowing that we have extra shirts on the backside in case we want to do something like this again or sell the shirts, give them away at remotes, do all the things that radio stations do. But these shirts, for the price of the shirts, we owned Main Street for 2 weeks. Do you understand the impact of that? And it went beyond Main Street. We had them hanging in any business that would allow us to do so. But when you were on Main Street, walking, driving, flying over, you see KINZ with Zeke. It was a guitar playing, I don't know, kind of a Jimmy Buffett feel to this little dude. Anyhow, on the shirt, it was hanging in every window, all these different colors. The other radio station. Can you imagine you go, all right, let's go hit Main Street and they drive down from us talking about it in the morning. And we were already talking to businesses. When I was talking, they started. I joined them, came back, talked to Bubba. By that time, we were pretty much done. And it was 2:00 in the afternoon. We owned the entire city and we knew it. And it was going to be for 2 weeks. And by the time we started talking all this stuff, people were all excited. We tightened up the format a little bit because Rob went in there to do his thing. I started voice tracking. Sutcliffe was voice tracking. If you don't know what that is, you have the computers in front of you and it has all the commercials and all the songs they're going to play. And you click where you want to do it with this particular thing. It was about that easy. You click and you would say, that was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers right here on KINZ. A lot of great music coming up for you. I have the Doors and I always pick on the Doors, so I won't do that. Usually, I'd throw a Jimi Hendrix thing at you, but it was Mike Sutcliffe. And so let's see, we're going to say he did Saturday in the Park. He was Chicago, was that? Anyhow, all the time it was in the system. But the salespeople learned how to sell, and the ones that didn't were let go. The ones that did were jamming. Peg was even selling for us. It was a really, really cool season for KINZ because before you know it, we're billing enough money that Mike's happy and things are getting paid off. And he got to climb up the dial with a tower thing, which Burlington was involved with as well. But you change frequencies, and the people, if they want the frequency you're sitting on in one town, you have to move that person off their signal. So they go to a different frequency. They're now 101.7 or whatever. Well, now 1017 is going to bleed and interfere on a 1017 that's over here. So they have to change. So there was like a 5 or 6 station swap. Mike was involved with this. So he got brand new boards, brand new microphones, brand new, all kinds of cool toys. And then he said, oh, wait, we have to pay taxes on all of this. Guys, come on, chop, chop, let's sell something, And so we went through this really cool season with KINZ as it was like a rebirth of the station. And then we had Zeke Stakes, which involved a big wheel on one of it. We were playing games and had t-shirts to go along with this because the t-shirt company that did the original Zeeks in the multiple colors, they were getting a lot of advertising. They were getting really busy, and they said, what else do you want to do? And I said, well, here's this idea. What if we could do this? And they drew this thing up. And it was awesome. It was Zeke in 3 poses. Over here, he was playing like blackjack. And over here, he was doing, and so spinning the wheel. So we had this whole thing figured out, and the promotions, just one after another of growth and getting new businesses involved. And they understood, the sales concepts that I was trying to teach them. And they were applying these new rules, and they were very successful. And so we had a good time, KNZ. And one day I was sitting there, and Mike and I still laugh about this. I was coming back from lunch, and I walked into the office because we shared a big office space, and he's said, "Hey, Steve, you'll notice there's something extra in your paycheck." I'm like, man, I've been waiting for this day. Working really, really hard, long hours, ready to go, and I tossed it on the desk. And he goes, "You don't have anything to say?" And I go, "It was a lot less than I thought it would be, Mike." I go, I know where we were. I know what you were doing. I know where we are now. And I go, I don't know, just a little disappointed from everything we talked about when I started here. And the next check that rolled around, he said, "Hey, just like the other time, see this number? Does this look better to you?" And I said, "I will take that number." And thank you. So it was a nice little cushion in the paycheck, a little extra money to go out to eat or take off for the weekend, whatever it was. But it was good. I had a lot of fun working at KINZ. But during this time, there was another radio station, um, and I was going, what is going on with these people? They're there, Coyote Radio, and they were on the hill, KOTE in Eureka, Kansas. And this was a station that was playing pretty much anything goes, but it was a little tighter format, and it was antiquated equipment, and it was things that you go, how is this even working for you guys? Well, there was an engineer that owned half the station, his brother, which was no slouch in making things happen, MacGyvery type tomfoolery going on there, to where if you really dug into, wait a minute, that tube is sitting in a homemade cradle. And they go, yeah, they wanted $795 for that cradle. And I took a piece of tin and some tin snips and just took my time. And on the third try, I got one that worked. And I saved a whole bunch of money. It's been in there for 3 years. And I go, are you serious? So here I am talking to this guy. I talked to my brother about this, and he goes, let's do it. And so I was like crazy, super excited. Here it is. Steve is going to be able to have a radio station that not only he can program, not only he can be in charge of the sales, he can clean toilets and take out trash and mow the lawn and all of the other things that happen when you move into this radio station that is not only antiquated, there's dirty, filthy, nasty holes in the floor in the back bathroom of this old single wide trailer the station was in. And you were in the studio looking out this big window, and the deer were cruising by. You'd look over and the cattle cruising down the hill. But before that happened, my wife and I probably had the most just head button adventures that we'd ever had all over this radio station in this town that I moved us to, because um it was ownership. It was ready to do something. I was ready to move forward and make a difference in the radio world. And from all of the Kansas Ag Network stuff that was on the air, met Larry Steckline, which Phil McComb actually worked for before he did his thing. So all these pieces are falling into place. And anytime the Kansas Association of Broadcasters got together, I was at their meetings and I was absorbing all of this and I was listening to what was going on. Well, now we're on a bigger scale. Not only that, there's other things we can do. My brother said, well, why don't we go to the NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters stuff? They're gonna be the ones that teach us more than what you're learning there. And I said, well, that's a big step. But my wife saw the radio station and said, there is no way I'm working here. There is no way, if you want to do this, we're staying where we're at and you're going to drive every day to get here, because there's no way. We're not going to move here and do this radio station thing as a family. It's not happening, Steve. Well, let's just say it did happen, and it wasn't a very energetic, happy 10 years under the surface, because there was a lot of, why did you do this to us? This is your dream. It's not ours. Why am I working 2 jobs to try to support us with all of this stuff? And we slid into all of this goofy stuff. I bought a house with her not even seeing it. It was a weird, tricky time. And you go, well, you sound like an ass. That's what she said. And I don't know. It was a dream, and it was me just freaking out over all of this. So, bottom line is, we were there. When we first took over the station, it was kind of like what we had to do in Burlington, talking all the monies and all of that stuff. My brother dealt with all that and all the legal stuff as far as what we could change, what we can't change. So, Peg, you remember Peg, she let me borrow their little camper trailer, and they pulled it up and put it behind the radio station. We got it all hooked up to water, and we got it all fired up so I'd have hot water for showers and all of that, because I wasn't going to sleep in this station. It was scary, it was nasty, it was gross. Bottom line, it was just a disgusting, dirty, nasty thing. So I was in this trailer and I would listen to the radio nonstop. And I would write down songs that needed to be deleted. I would write down things that, why is that playing? It's a cart that's doing silly commercials or whatever. So I was making a list from the beginning to the end of my day. Well, then at, I think it was 8 o'clock, the radio station switched over to a satellite type feed, I believe is how they had that set up. So I would go into the station, bring up the master list, and bring up those songs, and I would just put a D in front of their cart numbers, so it would never pull it up, and that would be delete later when I was able to do so, because if something happened and it fell through, they needed to be able to revert back to what they did for whatever reason if they wanted to do that, and they would just eliminate all those D's. Everything was back together, put all the D's on the stuff that I added to the system. We were good to go. Well, then I realized, wait a minute, this is not what I want. I'm going to do this radio station that is going to do hot country, and it's going to do a classic rock, more of a, and now they would call it a yacht rock or whatever. I just said a party rock, something to where it's got the little groove tunes going on. You're listening at work, in your car, at home, work, or in your car. We are. And so we did all of the imaging. The kids were doing it with us. They had an absolute blast, because it didn't take long for us to luck into a new trailer that we put up there. And when we did it right. And it was a weird deal. We had a show called Swap, and people would call in, buy, sell, and trade stuff, right? Well, when we took over, there was this guy, Dave, that was on the air. And I said, no, Dave, you don't have to stop doing this. You love this stuff. Come in, do the show with me. I will put my little spin on it. I get a little goofy, and we're just going to have fun with this. He was over there. He'd walk in with a 2-liter bottle of like Pepsi or Dr. Pepper, Pepsi, I think, and then snacks. And he would sit there. And this was a half-hour show when he did it. And we were talking, and he said, well, last Monday we had 8 calls. And I go, ooh, really? And he goes, no, that's good. And he pointed at the calendar, and on the calendar it had numbers circled on it, and it's 6, 4, 8 was like a 12. One time we had 16 calls. Can you imagine that in a half hour? And I'm all, yeah, I can imagine that. If you don't have a seatbelt on that chair, you better put one on, because we're getting ready to go live, and we're just talking like this, doing our thing. And The next thing you know, it's time for us to go, and it plays this intro, and he goes, "What's this?" And I go, "I made that last night." And it's just doing the little swap intro thing, and get in there and go, "Well, hello, good morning, boys, girls. How we doing today? It is a Wednesday. It's a wacky Wednesday. I'm up here on the hill. Dave's sitting over there, and we are ready to buy, sell, and trade. If you have anything that you want to get rid of, let's go ahead and make the phones ring." And I gave the phone numbers, and I said, "While we're waiting for the call," and the phone rang, and I go, "Good morning. You're on Swap. How can I help you?" And they said, "Well, I've got a 1972 Buick LeSabre. It's got 148,000 miles, a blown head gasket, but I'll take $600 for it." And so I said, "Okay," and a number. And so he's writing this down. I'm writing it down. And boom, when it's done, I repeat it. And the next time we got another call, and we wrote it down, and he went to repeat it. And I had this crazy tempo thing going like I do. And he said, "All right. Um, we have some fence posts. These are T-posts. They're in pretty good condition. He's got 14 of them, and 12 of them are pretty straight. There's two that I don't know if they're going to do much, but he's going to throw those in free, so it's not going to hurt you." He's asking $2 a piece, but for $1.75 a piece, you can take all of them. And I'm thinking, do you have to pay for the two? He's throwing those in, so it's 8 times $1.07. So anyhow, we're doing this thing, and he's like going like really slow through all of this. Like, you drank a liter of pop soda. You should be a little more energized than that. Eat another donut or whatever you brought in. Coffee, cake. All right, very good. Get that in your system, because we're going. And the first day that I did this with him, we had like 12 calls. The next day, there were 16 calls. And by the following, I don't think he made it a week. By the following Tuesday, he said, "I can't do this." And I go, "Why?" I go, "I thought we were having fun." He goes, "I am so stressed. I wake up stressed out because the pace is different." And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I was used to, we do the weather 4 or 5 times during that half hour, and we tell what's going on around the community, but people weren't calling in, and I don't know that I can do that." And I said, "Well, sir, thank you for your time. You don't have to. I'm going to fly solo on this until I can convince my wife to do otherwise." But this was like, oh my gosh, old station stuff. And people were allowed to, before we had the station, they wanted to do a radio show. And Chris would say, "Hey, I want to do a rock show." And they would say, "Well, all right, Mr. Hansel, here you go. What do you want to do?" "Rock and roll. And it's, I got my own records that I'm going to play." And they said, "Okay." And he says, "So what do I do?" And he goes, "Well, show up here. If you going to go on the air at 6, be here about 5:45 and get yourself all ready to go. And at 6 o'clock, it's your show. Take off and do it." He goes, "How do I get in? Is someone going to be there?" And I said, "Nah, there's a key under the tongue of the trailer on the hitch." And so this key was available to anyone and everyone, and most people knew where it was and what it was. And they knew they could get in there. And I'm all, "Why wasn't there some hostile takeover of the station?" I would have done that, if nothing else, just for a joke. If somebody had a station that I had access to, I'd break in there and do a show overnight, and just, from like midnight to 6 or whatever. And they show up at 7 just to get in, get out of there. And they'd go, "What is that smell? This is like somebody was in here. Somebody's been talking into my microphone." And it would be fun. But anyhow, no hostile takeovers. But we did take over. We did find someone on Swap that said, "We have a trailer that we need to sell for $3,000, and or $6,000." And it didn't even register in my brain. Wait a minute. Why do we don't want to build anything. This is what we kind of need. And it went away, because it was like every day it was on there, and we didn't even connect the dots. We were all duh. But so much for doodling on that notepad. We finally woke up. We went to see this thing, and other than it being green, carpet, countertops, walls, the entire thing was green. I don't know why, but it was. And this couple had like 4 kids, and they were all living in this thing. And he goes, "Well, it got way too small. We can't do this." We bought another one, and we need the money from this one to finish that deal. And I said, well, we'll give you, and I don't know what they were asking for. If it was 8 and I said 6, or if it was 6 and I go, you know what, we'll give you $6,000 for it. He goes, well, I can't do it for that and leave all the furniture, in the kitchen and these cabinets and stuff. I can't do that. I'd have to have at least another $200. And I said, done. Let's just make it happen. What I bought for $200 was a booth, an L-shaped bench that had this table with it and a matching big cabinet that we ended up putting all this junk in and whatever else was thrown in with the deal. But they were solid oak, and I had people, I'll give you $1,500 for that right now. And I said, no, I'm good. They don't even want the cabinet. They wanted the table. I didn't know. Anyhow, so we got this bargain. I had this really smart guy come in, and they poured the pad for this, and everything was skidded. So under the trailer, they have the beams going across. Every one of those was sitting on concrete strips, and they were all fastened down around that. And then you had your regular tie downs on the corner. This thing wasn't going anywhere. Even in a Kansas tornado, we thought we would get the hell off the hill. There is no way I would stay up on that hill during the storms. You're at one of the highest points and you have a 300-foot lightning rod up there. No. And the people we bought this from, the guy said, well, if it's severe weather and it's scary, what you do is just put on that motorcycle helmet, go out there and strap yourself to the tower and hang on. No, you don't do that. What you do is you get your ass off the hill. You get home, you're in the basement going, all right, kids, come on. We're in an interior room. There's no underneath the stair. Anyhow, we can talk about all that some other time. But that gets us there. The house, there, very, very cool house. It was a transitional time for everyone, our children. And I need to probably stop the radio jargon here and then catch you up on Family Ties. All right, not the show, but the little bows that we're tying in these stories. And we need to get my wife and children involved in this conversation, at least from me explaining what they were going through with a lot of this stuff in the radio world, but also so you can understand the relationship that we have, not only with each other, but with our children. Our children call us on their way home from work still every night. When they're working, we get a phone call and goes, hey, so it's that 20-minute drive, 25-minute drive. Tell me about your day. We'll tell you about our day. And everybody catches up and it's a great time. But I want to get everyone in. In fact, I will have my daughter jump back on because we can talk about the role that she played in the radio station really, really young. And then we could get Bailey in here talking as well, which is our youngest, which is another story, another blessing, and what it does with Valentine's Day. It doesn't mean the same to our family as it does to everyone else. And see, we're going to talk about all that stuff, but you and I are getting to know each other. And I want you to reach out to me and just to let me know what you think. Leave a comment down here. Say, hey, you know what? I like it. You're goofy, but you're telling stories and I'm having a good time because I am. And I want you to have a good time as well. Soon we'll have the old intro music going and it'll be all of the things that podcasts are. But now what we're trying to do is just be real. And that's my goal here. HCRD.online. And that should be up and running soon. It's just a matter of how many people are really going to go at this point, but it's there. We just have to clean up a couple things and publish it and move on. But until next time, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I may start squeezing in bonus episodes if that's okay. Just, hey, I've got 15, 20 minutes. Let's talk. I'm also working on that side podcast within this podcast talking about prostate cancer and the story and the things that I went through with that, and maybe helping you out and pointing you to the Hopecast. So if you need that information, it's there, and I'll do all the links and do all those special things people do. And hopefully this time when I publish this, it'll be real. I don't even know that we're going to edit much, maybe a drink or two out of it, or maybe not, because it's water and I'm human. So we'll do it. Boys and girls, until next time, you guys have a wonderful day, evening, whenever it is you're listening. I appreciate you for doing that. So keep it locked in. I'll be back.